Hi, for the Pocket Talks today we have here Professor Matthew Connolly from Columbia University presenting his book Fatal Misconception. Thank you, Matthew, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
I have two questions on your book and on the global turn of humanities, and to try to understand better this phenomenon of humanities. Do you believe that after 15, 20 years of debating what is the global turn, we can have an idea, sum up an idea from the debate?
Yeah, well, this is a debate that was already going on more than 20 years ago in the United States, because there weren't many historians still interested in subjects like diplomatic history, even military history. Instead, more and more historians were interested in doing social history, or environmental history. And so what happened was, more than 20 years ago already, there were historians who said, look, if you look around the world today, it's obvious that it's not just, states and the way they try to relate to each other, whether through diplomacy or war, that matter in world politics. That, we have to start looking at things like non-governmental organizations or multinational corporations or transnational social movements. And so a kind of movement began among historians to try to rewrite the history of the world and not assume that the world was run by nation states. So that's in essence for me what global history is about. It's not about the end of the nation state. I think anyone who has tried to cross borders without a passport understands that states are still quite powerful and quite important. Instead, what we're trying to do is understand the way the world is made up of many things besides states. In effect, what we're talking about is the pluralization of world politics, where in some ways it's a return to the way the world used to be before we assumed that nation states ran the world, where just as the world 500 years ago was made up of city-states and principalities and empires and so on, similarly the world that we live in today is made up of, yes, nation states, but also it's made up of activist groups. It's made up of networks of scientists or international lawyers. It's made up of multinational corporations. And so we're trying to understand the world as it is and how it came to be. And so that's really, for me, the core idea of global history.
Okay, and how does your work on the politics of population fit or use this transnational global approach?
Well, when I started out, I was very interested in looking at the history of international organizations, and I thought that this is one area, population policies and programs, where it was clear that international organizations had a big impact. And in some ways it was kind of an easy case, or I thought it was. But what I found out is, in fact, there was a whole ecosystem of different kinds of organizations that were responsible for mounting what became an incredibly ambitious campaign to try to get people all over the world, especially poor people, to stop having so many children. So yes, these UN agencies like the UN Population Fund and the World Health Organization, they turned out to be quite important. But one reason why they were so important is because nation states, especially the United States, looked at them as vehicles, that were going to allow them to carry out these programs all over the world under the auspices of the United Nations. And in fact, one reason why these states, especially the United States, carried out these programs is because non-governmental organizations like Planned Parenthood were so effective in lobbying them and getting congressmen and senators to adopt population control programs. So there's a whole ecosystem where in the end of the day, United Nations organizations are providing much of the funding for some of these NGOs. The NGOs are getting nation states, not just the US, but also Sweden and Britain and so on, to fund these international organizations. So it created this kind of feedback effect. And in the end, it was quite powerful. It really did manage to mount these programs that were global in scope and really did try to control the population of the world.
Okay, this is great. Thank you very much, Matt, for coming.
Thank you, Alexandre. I enjoyed it.